Something broke open this morning that demands your full attention, and the reason most people are going to miss its real significance is that every outlet covering it is treating 3 separate stories as 3 separate stories. They are not separate. They are one story, one system, one slow-motion escalation that just crossed a threshold so consequential that its implications will ripple through every energy market, every diplomatic back-channel, and every military calculation across the globe for the days that remain before this thing either finds an exit or doesn't. Here is what happened. Iran's top military commander, the head of the Qatam al-Anbiya Central Headquarters, issued an official statement this morning. I am going to give you the exact language, because in moments like this, the precise words are the entire story. He said, "Security in the Persian Gulf and the Sea of Oman is either for everyone or for no one." That was the official position of Iran's armed forces, endorsed by the Revolutionary Guard, and then he went further. He said no port in the region will be safe, not Hormuz, not Iranian ports. Every port, Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Doha, Kuwait City, and Ras Tanura, Saudi Arabia's primary oil export terminal, and arguably the single most strategically critical energy facility on the face of this earth. Iran put every one of those ports on an official military threat list in a single statement this morning. That is the first thing. Here is the second thing. As of this moment, April 15th, 2026, the United States has issued no formal response to that statement, no press conference, no counter-threat, no official military communique addressing it directly. The blockade Iran is responding to is still fully operational, the ceasefire is technically still in effect, and Iran just announced through its official military command structure that it intends to expand the conflict from one strategic strait to the entire Persian Gulf and the Red Sea combined. Washington said nothing specific back. That is the second thing. Here is the third thing. And this is the piece that almost nobody is connecting. The piece that makes the other two make complete sense. The reason Iran has the confidence to threaten an entire region after 46 days of being bombed, after losing its supreme leader, after watching its nuclear infrastructure get obliterated and its air defense network stripped bare, the reason a country in that condition can still say no port will be safe, that reason is China. Not because China told Iran to say it, not because China is fighting alongside Iranian forces, but because China has been doing something far more calculated, far more consequential, and far less visible than fighting. Understanding what China has actually been doing is the only way to understand how this conflict reached where it is today. So let me walk you through all 3 of these things properly, because when you hold them together, Iran's threat, America's silence, and China's architecture of support, the picture that emerges is so much darker than anything in the headlines. Start with the threat because it is being framed in exactly the wrong way. The coverage is treating it as a military announcement. Iran is threatening to attack Gulf ports. And yes, it is that. But the military dimension is almost secondary to what is actually being communicated, and to whom. When Iran says no port in the region will be safe, Iran is not primarily talking to the United States. Washington already knows Iran's military capabilities intimately. America has been at war with Iran for 46 days. American military planners know every missile stockpile, every drone battery, every fast attack boat in every Iranian harbour. An Iranian military threat is not new intelligence for the Pentagon. Iran is talking to Saudi Arabia, to the UAE, to Kuwait, to Qatar, to every Gulf monarchy with a port, a refinery, an oil terminal, a financial district tied to global markets. Iran is saying, if America's blockade continues, we will make this your emergency. Your ports, your crude shipments, your economies, your futures. That message carries entirely different weight for Gulf states, because those states did not go to war with Iran. Saudi Arabia did not bomb Iran. The UAE did not bomb Iran. These nations have been watching this conflict with mounting anxiety, hoping it ends quickly, praying it does not reach their doorstep. And now Iran is telling them officially that their doorstep is the next address on the list. The Saudi response alone tells you how much damage that message has already done. The Wall Street Journal reported this week that Saudi Arabia is now actively pressing Washington to abandon the blockade and return to negotiations, fearing it will provoke Iranian retaliation against critical shipping lanes. Saudi Arabia, the country America has repeatedly cited as a primary beneficiary of confronting Iranian aggression. That country is now asking America to stop because what America is doing is making Saudi Arabia's situation dramatically worse. That is not a minor diplomatic wrinkle. That is a structural fracture in the coalition. America needs to make this campaign work, and it is a direct result of Iran understanding exactly how to weaponize regional fear. Now let me address why this threat is credible, because there is a temptation to dismiss it. Trump himself waved it away, saying Iran's navy is laying at the bottom of the sea. But even Trump acknowledged in the same breath that Iran still has fast attack ships. And fast attack ships are precisely what you need to threaten ports and tankers. You do not need an aircraft carrier to blow up a tanker. You need a fast boat, a drone, or a missile. Iran has all three in significant quantities that survived the full 46-day campaign. Mohsen Rezai, a former Revolutionary Guard commander in a senior advisory role, was even more explicit. He posted publicly that Iran's armed forces retain major untouched levers to counter the blockade. He is not saying Iran is running out of options. He is saying Iran has been deliberately holding things back, and the capabilities not yet deployed are now being placed on the table. That is not desperation. That is strategy. And there is a second dimension that makes the threat even more alarming. Iran is not just threatening the Gulf, it is threatening the Red Sea. The Houthis in Yemen demonstrated for over a year during the Gaza war that they could sustain a Red Sea disruption campaign that forced global carriers to reroute around Africa entirely. They did it. It worked. If Iran signals to the Houthis that the ceasefire on Red Sea operations is finished, and Houthi missiles start hitting tankers in the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, at the same time Iranian operations are escalating in the Gulf, you are no longer looking at one choke point. You are looking at two simultaneous choke points, affecting somewhere between 30 and 40% of all global seaborne trade. There is no modern precedent for an economic disruption of that combined scale. Now let me address America's silence precisely because I think it is being misread. America's silence today is not confusion. It is not weakness. But it has a cost that is compounding by the hour. America is simultaneously managing at least 5 crises right now. It is enforcing a naval blockade with more than 10,000 personnel and over a dozen warships. It is managing a ceasefire that expires in 6 days on April 19th. It is in indirect negotiations with Iran through intermediaries in Pakistan, Turkey, Egypt and Oman. It is preparing for a potential second round of direct talks. And all of this is happening while China and Russia maneuver at the edges of the conflict in ways that complicate every American decision simultaneously. In that context, formally counter-threatening Iran creates a specific problem. If Washington announces that any Iranian action against Gulf ports will be met with further military escalation, America accelerates the confrontation at precisely the moment it needs diplomatic breathing room. The blockade is already a massive pressure instrument. Adding a public counter-threat on top of it pushes both sides further down a road where neither can retreat without losing face. But the silence has its own cost, because Gulf states are watching the same thing. They see Iran threaten every port in the region. They see America say nothing specific. And they start asking the question Iran wants them to ask. Is America going to protect us if Iran acts? Or is America so consumed by its nuclear confrontation with Tehran that our ports and our economies are secondary? That uncertainty is exactly what Iran is engineering. The Gulf port threat is not primarily a military plan. It is a diplomatic wedge designed to fracture America's regional coalition. If Saudi Arabia or the UAE begin making private arrangements directly with Iran to protect their own infrastructure, if they quietly break from American policy to guarantee their own security, America loses the coalition the blockade requires to function. Iran has been playing this game since the war began, allowing China, Russia, India, Iraq and Pakistan to pass through the strait while blocking Western ships, building exactly the kind of split it needs. Countries choosing bilateral arrangements with Tehran over full alignment with Washington, now China. This is the layer without which nothing else makes full sense. Start with a number that should stop you cold. Before this war began in late February 2026, Iran was exporting approximately 1.68 million barrels of oil per day. In March, the most intense month of the war, when Hormuz was largely closed and oil prices were spiking, Iran exported 1.84 million barrels per day, more than before the war started. In April so far, Iran has been shipping 1.71 million barrels per day, still above the pre-war average. How is that possible? How does a country under active American military assault somehow export more oil during a war than it did before one? The answer is China. And the answer involves an architecture China built specifically over a decade to survive exactly this kind of American enforcement pressure. China has been buying Iranian oil throughout the sanctions era. China paid in yuan, not dollars, bypassing the dollar-denominated financial system entirely. China used second-tier banks that operate outside SWIFT, the network American sanctions rely on to create economic pain. China deployed what analysts call the dark fleet, tankers that disable their automatic identification systems, sail dark without broadcasting location, and deliver Iranian crude to Chinese refineries known as teapots that process sanctioned oil without traceable documentation. China stored Iranian crude in bonded warehouses and floating storage across Asian waters. And China built all of this specifically so that when America moved to cut Iran off from its revenues, the system would already be in place and running. It has held. Tanker tracking services using satellite imagery have recorded 11.7 million barrels of Iranian crude moving to China since the war began on February 28th. Iran is still getting paid, and the blockade cannot stop this trade because it was engineered to be unreachable by American enforcement tools. Here is where China's role in Iran's confidence becomes direct and impossible to ignore. Iran's threat to Gulf ports is credible only if Iran believes it can survive the consequences of acting on it. If Iran strikes a tanker in Dubai's waters or damages a port facility in Qatar, America escalates hard, and Iran has to believe, entering that escalation, that it can absorb what comes back without collapsing. The reason Iran believes that is China. As long as China is buying Iranian oil through the dark fleet system, Iran has the economic oxygen to sustain its position through escalation cycles that would otherwise be fatal. The blockade causes real pain, but it does not produce the rapid economic collapse that would force Iran to capitulate, because China has guaranteed Iran a lifeline the blockade structurally cannot reach. And then American intelligence this week confirmed something even more direct. CNN reported that US intelligence indicates China is preparing to transfer weapons to Iran, specifically shoulder-fired anti-aircraft missile systems, MANPADS, the exact weapon category that shot down a US F-15E over Iranian territory on April 3rd. China is reportedly routing these shipments through third countries to obscure their origin. And when Trump was directly asked about it at the White House, he said he doubted it. His own intelligence community had confirmed it. His own president publicly doubted his own agency's findings. That gap between what America's intelligence apparatus knows and what America's president is willing to say on camera is its own form of strategic silence. And it is a silence China is actively counting on. Call it the confidence ladder, because it explains exactly why Iran escalated from threatening Hormuz specifically to threatening the entire region this morning. Every time Iran makes a threat and America does not decisively punish it, Iran gains a rung. Every time Iran tests a boundary and finds the consequences manageable, its confidence to test the next one up grows. Iran closed Hormuz in February. America spent weeks trying to force it open and could not do it fully. Iran ran a toll system choosing which nations could pass. America threatened escalation. The strait was never fully reopened on American terms. Then Iran accepted a ceasefire, but immediately began violating it in Lebanon and reimposing strait restrictions. America announced a blockade. Within 24 hours, a Chinese-connected tanker sailed directly through it. America's military stated that tanker was not in violation of blockade terms. Iran watched that and drew its conclusions. Now Iran is threatening every port from the Gulf to the Red Sea simultaneously. Not because its military is stronger than last week. It has been degraded significantly over 46 days. But because its strategic confidence has been built rung by rung. Every barrel of oil China buys is a rung. Every weapon China prepares to transfer is a rung. Every time a Chinese tanker passes through the blockade without consequence, that is a rung. Every time China publicly condemns the blockade and America does not formally confront China's role, that is a rung. Iran threatened every Gulf port this morning from a position of strategic confidence. Not military superiority, but the cold, accumulated confidence of a country that knows it has a powerful partner absorbing the economic pressure designed to break it. And that is the most important question this morning raises, one almost no outlet is asking directly. If China is the foundational reason Iran can make this threat, its oil purchases, weapons pipeline, diplomatic protection, dark fleet infrastructure, and coordination with Russia, then what is America actually going to do about China's role? Trump threatened a 50% tariff on China if it transfers weapons to Iran, while simultaneously saying he doubted China was doing it. You cannot credibly threaten consequences for something you publicly say you do not believe is happening. China heard that. Iran heard that. Everyone heard that. The deeper question is whether America's strategy for ending this war has a China dimension at all. The blockade targets Iran. The negotiations target Iran. The ceasefire framework targets Iran. But the reason Iran has held its position for 46 days, revenues flowing, weapons pipelines moving, sitting in Islamabad for 19 hours and walking away without a deal, is not purely Iranian resilience, it is Chinese structural support. A strategy that ignores Chinese support is trying to win a match, while pretending one of the most powerful players on the board is not moving pieces. And China is actively moving pieces. China is in daily diplomatic contact with both sides. China is buying Iranian oil. China is reportedly preparing to arm Iran. China's foreign minister met with Russia's Lavrov this week. Putin is planning to visit Beijing in the weeks surrounding Trump's own planned visit to China in May. Russia and China are coordinating their positions on this war at the absolute highest levels, and America is treating them as spectators. Let me close with what the next 48 to 72 hours will actually tell us. The ceasefire expires in 6 days, and what happens before April 19th will determine not just whether this war ends, but what kind of strategic landscape emerges on the other side. If America responds to Iran's Gulf port threat with a formal direct counter-statement, addressing what America will do if Iran acts against Saudi, Emirati or Qatari infrastructure, that tells you America has chosen escalation, betting blockade plus military pressure forces Iran to the table before the deadline. If America maintains its silence while intensifying back-channel diplomacy, which is the current observable pattern, that tells you America is still searching for a negotiated exit, absorbing Iran's threats as bargaining pressure. And if America begins directly engaging China on its role, if the planned Trump-Xi summit in May includes real enforceable pressure on Chinese weapons transfers and oil purchases as actual leverage within the Iran negotiation, then you're watching something that has not happened once in this entire 46-day conflict. America finally treating this as a three-party problem rather than a bilateral standoff. I do not know which of those three paths America is on. I'm not sure anyone outside a very small room in Washington knows right now. What I do know is that Iran's threat this morning was not bluster. It was a calculated escalation from a country that spent 46 days running live experiments on how far it can push before America responds with decisive consequences. And the answer it has accumulated rung by rung is further than almost anyone thought possible when this began. Watch what America says today. Not on social media, but in State Department briefings, in CENTCOM statements, in whatever back-channel signals reach Pakistan and Turkey and Egypt. The nation's currently shuttling between Washington and Tehran, trying to build language for a second round of talks before April 19th. And watch what China says or deliberately does not say, because China's silence about its own role has been every bit as loud and deliberate as America's silence about Iran's Gulf port threat this morning. 2 silences, 2 calculations, 6 days left on a clock nobody publicly controls, and a ceasefire held together by threads that Iran just pulled on very hard. Iran's threat is not the story. The system that made Iran confident enough to issue it is the story. Because systems do not hold press conferences, they do not announce their own existence. They simply operate quietly, rung by rung, until the day they become impossible to ignore. China built that system around Iran over years. This war did not create it. This war just switched on the lights.